So Apple have updated Logic Pro to 10.8, getting closer to that ever elusive 11. They've added a bunch of quality of life features, as well as the ability to record 32-bit depth. If you're recording something incredibly quiet and need to bring that level up, that is going to be phenomenally valuable to you. But in my case, they've added 3 new plugins that really enhance creativity and music making. And in this video, we're going to look at those. Let's look at their new mastering tool. Initially, like you might think, I thought it was a plugin that would be able to drop in on any old channel and have like a good mastering project going. However, it goes on the stereo output, and that's the only place you can put it. There's a new little icon down here that says mastering, go figure. When we click that, it's going to analyze the track. Basically, it's going to play through the track start to finish, but it does it silently and quickly rather than playing through the whole thing. And that analysis process is fed into the mastering chain, and then, well, it will give us these end results here. Once we've done, we're going to create our mastering chain, and here we go. Now, I'm just going to move the loudness and tonal balance plugins below it here, partly so we can look at what it's done loudness wise, and we can see what it's done tonal balance wise as well. So first thing up here, you got character, transparent, clean, valve, punch. For me, I think the transparent sounds absolutely awesome. Let's just A and B real quick what it's done, and then we'll have a listen to the different variations. Let's get a busier part of the track maybe. So we can hear it's done a lot of EQing, and we can see that, but it's not a huge amount level-wise. There's some compression going on for sure. Nothing width-wise. It definitely fills it out a bit more as well. We've got a LUFS meter over here. I brought my LUFS meter up because I was curious to see if it comes out at a particular range. We're just going to set it at -14 here, which would be like the limiting range for the likes of Spotify and whatnot. Don't necessarily need to adhere to that, but here we are. Now that seems to be roughly what it's done, but we've got this loudness control anyway. Now I'm just going to switch through the different character types while looping over that same bit. Now punch really clearly is doing a lot on the compression side. I think transparent's the nicest though. Okay, so we've got this little slider here. This basically adjusts this kind of match EQ. We bring it right down, obviously with flat, puts it here. The maximum amount it's adjusting here is only about 3 dB, but it's kind of pretty detailed in the way it's done it. So we could dial it back, or we could leave it where it is. It seems to be doing quite a nice job in lifting things up, controlling the kind of boxiness down here, punching the kick through, and it's left the real high and low flat. Now it would be nice if we could roll some of that off, but we just can't. Now with custom EQ though, we do have the ability to do a couple of things. We've got a 3-band EQ here just hidden behind it. So if I decided actually I disagree, I like what it's done here, but I want to maybe lift up my highs, I can still do that, or lower my lows, for example. The options there should you need it. Now loudness and the limiter is done to true peak. You can see here it's going to -1, so it's leaving that 1 dB of total headroom overall. If we put excite on, it gets a lot louder, a lot more aggressive, and it does seem to break through that -1 with the exciter on. As we pump the loudness up, still pushing into that true peak right there. You get a nice bit of loudness. Now let's start our LUFS range so we can have our integrated. It doesn't matter because we're not going to measure it over the whole track here. You get an idea that sort of momentary wise, we're getting up into a nice range for this kind of music here. We can push this quite hard. Sitting up there with that momentary amount, the -9 there, it's pretty nice. the loudness compensation. Definitely helps us out there. Take it away. A lot louder. This stops us just pumping it up, pumping it up, pumping it up. So we've got that kind of match level going on. Take the exciter off maybe. I really like what it's doing though. Now correlation meter down here, it's different to what I'm used to reading. You want it to be up here at the +1. If it crosses over 0 into -1, if it crosses down here into -1, that's negative correlation. You're going to get phase cancelling. Up here in +1's fine. So let you see if we bring it down into mono, it's going to stick right on the +1. Now we can give it some width. Obviously we need to keep an eye on that meter. Yeah, that's way too much. We're starting to lose the vocals here. A little bit of width, it's actually kind of nice, right? It does a really nice job there. Alright, so now we've set our settings a bit. Let's have a little listen to the character again, and because we've got a loudness compensation, we shouldn't hear some huge jumps. So for me there, it's kind of a toss-up between punch and transparent. Punch does add quite a nice bit to it in this type of music. But would it ruin the start of the track? It is possible that it would.
Caved inside these walls, my motivation's gone. Can't face what I've become. I feel the urge to run out from this place. Caved inside these walls, my motivation's gone. Can't face.
See, transparent is nicer for the bass and everything in the introduction, but in this section here, punch gives it a lot, and that's the most important section, and you could blend it between the two potentially. Overall, that is kind of all she wrote. Now let's have a quick look at the tonal balance. This is set to pop. Let's just see what it's done to the balance of the track. We're going to have quite a dip in here where there's no vocal, that's to be expected. So it's not far off the kind of balance you get from tonal balance control's pop setting. Definitely more on the top end, so it's a little lower overall, but not far off. If we were to punch this up maybe, and go with that balance, now that's way too much, it's ruining the mix entirely, but I think we'll start to see we're closer to that balance. And that's the kind of balance we're getting with that. Today's video is sponsored by DistroKid. They let me get my music out to all of the major distributors, and they do that at a price an independent artist can easily afford. If you're ready to get your music or beats out there and want to release an unlimited amount of music each year, check the link in the description below for a discount off of your first year of unlimited distribution with DistroKid. Another tool that they've added allows us to manipulate time, tempo, and volume all in sync with the music. You might have seen tools like this before. If you've used something like Melder Rhythmizer or Grossbeat, you're going to be kind of familiar with the fun stuff we can do here. This is now built directly into Logic, so no need for a third party or any of that messing about. So we can put it on a track, and it's available for us in the multi-effects here. So we can go down to Logic, multi-effects, and Beat Breaker is there for us. And I've just popped it here on a drum break for us. So when we hit play, we can see that our drums are populated within here. And we've got a breakdown here, like we're used to seeing in something like the Quick Sampler. And we've got the orange line, which is kind of like linear time. And when we select, we can see that we've got a highlight of that. Now we can, very simply, click and control it straight away from there. And now we're going back to the kick. Get some hi-hats in, snare, or we can go forward in time as well. To the kick that's ahead of time. There we go, well now we've got a double shuffle going on, which is really nice. This is just going to save us having to actually chop up our breaks, frankly. We can just run like any drum loop into this and mix it up as we see fit, which is kind of ridiculous. Now at the minute it's set to custom, but we can do things like halftime and slow it down overall. Instant triplets, which is just ridiculously good fun. You know, back to custom, that's our drum break. Instant triplet break. It's ridiculous. Reverse on the end. Just skip around randomly. Oh, it's wild. It's going to make jungle breaks so easy. Well, instant fill options go right at the end. And if we hit the edit tool at the end here, we can actually open up a preset of these, and there are hundreds to choose from that mix things up. Got a pumping sidechain option here, for example, reorder, techno stutter. Now what about if you want to mix things up yourself? Well, we can double click to add extra points in time. As you see, if we move them around, it adjusts that overall grid to match as well. So we can shuffle up these individual segments as much as we want. We can change things like the input beat up here with the slider as well, so you can actually go fine-tuned rather than snap into the grid if you needed to do that. So we can move incrementally through the sample itself and find the right spot. We can change the length overall, so 4 beats being 1 bar, jump to 8 beat. Then we've just got a longer increment of time to work with. And I'm not really getting it with this drum break, but we've got a D-click amount. If we put it to 0, you can hear ever so slightly the tiniest little pops and clicks where it's jumping around in time. D-click just basically going to introduce a tiny little fade to help reduce that. Up around 60% seems to be fine. On this break, like 18% and it's completely gone. You can mix it in with the original break. If you want to automate this, you can very quickly just whack it up to 100 for quick stutters. In the menu here, we can turn snap on and off or to different increments of quantization, which is super useful. We can then switch from time to repeat. So now, we can create stutters like so. And we can do that with a click and a drag. And these mix and match in with time as well. And then lastly, we can apply volume to this. If you want to take this a step further, we can change our channel from read to latch automation. And we can do things like and now when we switch back to read, our automation's been remembered and we can play these back in sequence. Now I've created an entire masterclass on Alchemy. It's an incredibly detailed and in-depth synth. It's outrageously involved, to be honest, and even a 4-hour class doesn't really get you fully into it. But there's some incredible sampling features in there that aren't necessarily easily accessible, but they should be. And that's what this new tool is. It allows the sampling capability of Alchemy to be brought to the forefront for quick and easy access. Let's have a look. And we have Alchemy, the full version here, but now, if we zoom down here, we've got Sample Alchemy, which is a new stripped back version of the Alchemy tool, making it considerably easier for you to use. Now, unlike the other version of Alchemy, there's not a 1,000,001 presets. This is for you to drop your individual audio samples into. Press F, we can go into my sample library and we'll go pick something out. So we've got the sample archive here, and in most sample packs, we're going to have like some single hits, for example. So if we grab, say, augmented D&B here, we've got one shots, and let's say we've got bass synth melodics here, and let's grab, say, a little sound just here. We can drag and drop that straight in, and it's now got that preloaded as an individual single sample to trigger. It's basically an easier way to work with the quick sampler, but with the goodness of Alchemy built into it. So let's have a play around with this sound and see what it is that we can create. I'm just going to put a very simple 2-bar melody in, and let's go up to my beloved tempo of 174. And it's resizable, so let's have it nice and large for you guys. Okay, so we can very simply adjust a whole host of parameters. One nice thing right up here, let's put amp on. Now in the play format, this is basically our sample playback option and some of the jazzy stuff we can do with it. First, let's have a look at source. We've got source A. If we had other sounds loaded, we've got B, C, and D, and we can mix and match those 4 different sources. Playback speed, we can drastically reduce this, or even faster. Kind of get a talking sound there, right? Coarse tune, so if I wanted to pitch this down an octave, 2 octaves. That's all right with that. And then we've got a fine tune. We're going to slightly detune to similar sounds, for example. Then we've got the engine. At the minute, we're on granular, and we can pick the size of the grains, much as we like, or the density between the grains. We're just going to let us shape the sound pretty well. And the timing between those grains as well. We can switch the engine to additive. As you can hear, very different sound. We're going to have to adjust things like the symmetry and the odd and even harmonics for how we want that to sound. Partials lock and the harmonic partials locks, partials formant, are all going to give us different ways of playing back that additive engine. And spectral will give us the visual format effectively. I liked what we were doing with granular. Granular doesn't have an effect change. Lastly, we've got a filter. And we've got the same filters that are available to us in Alchemy. And we can do some horrendous things, like utilize our comb filter and feedback. We've also got the ability to introduce a loop. We can move where we want that loop to be. Or do we want to play back the whole sample? Or we could have it scrub. Or bow. Or even ARP. Here we've got our attack, decay, sustain and release as well. Should we need to maybe ramp a sound in? Or have it immediately decay. Make more of a pluck sound with a short sustain and release. When changing modes, we can now go into something like motion, where we can create changes as we go through different parts of the pattern. Now we've got ourselves a big bass tone. And this starts at 2 separate points. And A and B work in different ways. You can see when we select each, they change in their playback. We can have one be additive and one be granular, for example. We can change the harmonics in one, not the other. We can change the pitch in one and not the other. So now in motion, if we were to hit record, we can move these around within this limit here. Let's give ourselves a bit of a longer pattern to work with. Hit record. And lastly, trim will allow us to, say, shorten off a sample should we need to do so. I'd like to see the fade option in here that is available to us in the quick sampler, but good enough for now. And there's an introduction to the Sample Alchemy option, allowing us to get access to the key functionality of the Alchemy sampler in a much simpler and easier to interact with plugin. The Logic 10.8 update is fantastic, and it is completely free to all Logic owners, whether like me you bought 10 years ago or you're a recent joiner to the family. It's well worth updating for these 3 tools as well as those quality of life features. If you want to learn all of the ins and outs of the update, linked below is the full specs and breakdown. If you want to check out more and learn a little bit more about Logic, you can check out either of these videos next, or maybe subscribe to the channel where there's some 700 videos for you to scan through. I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Take care.